Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the ZymCast. My name is Chase Matherly.
I'm Kyle Grubb.
Hey, Kyle.
I'm Cheyenne. Hi.
Hey, Cheyenne.
Hello.
What are we talking about today?
I think our plan today is to talk a little bit more about Dungeons and Dragons.
What's that?
It's a tabletop RPG. Seriously, if you don't
What's
know what
that?
Dungeons and Dragons are, no, stop it.
Well, I mean, if you don't know what Dungeons and Dragons is, then, well, I would understand you not knowing in depth, but you should have an understanding of kind of what it is.
Have you seen Stranger Things
Or Big Bang Theory.
or Dungeons and Dragons?
The movie?
Yes. Honestly, a terrible way to understand what Dungeons and Dragons is watching the Dungeons and Dragons movies.
Right.
Or like any show that has like mega nerds usually portray it in some way.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So,
But I've played too.
I know. So, Dungeons and Dragons is one of a multitude of tabletop RPGs, games where...
Multitude.
Yes. Games where somebody is, like, basically somebody's running the game and everybody else are playing as characters. To be really, really simple.
Really broad.
There's almost always somebody who is in charge of everything except for essentially the main cast.
Yeah, basically like kind of like a choose your own adventure, but being led by a single person. Well, more or less a single person is leading, but the rest of the group is assisting.
Okay. So actually, I like this choose your own adventure analogy. It's perfect. So playing a tabletop RPG is like a choose your own adventure book, except there are no choices that are laid out for you to make, and also you're somebody's writing it as you go. And that person has no idea what choices you're going to make. And so they can prepare and prepare and prepare. And somebody's like, actually, I think I'm just going to fight somebody in this tavern. You're like, what? Like, yeah, no, I think I'm just going to spend my whole session creating a fight club in the middle of the city. But there's like a dragon that's threatening everybody. Well, that sucks. So yeah, fight club?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you've seen that Key and Peele sketch, there's a Key and Peele sketch about Dungeons and Dragons that's actually really funny. Because it kind of has like that initial like portrayal of Dungeons and Dragons as like or Dungeons and Dragons players as like extremely nerdy and like, oh guys, there's a dragon, like it's attacking the town or whatever in kind of that voice too, which a little detrimental to the stigma, doesn't help. But the joke is that the dungeon master brings his cousin in, who is like this, thug kind of guy, and and while everyone normally like is like totally on board with this like dungeon fighting or dungeon crawling dragon fighting
Dragon crawling story.
Yeah, like that kind of story.
You're telling me you never had a good dragon crawl.
The cousin comes in and is just like, I want to go to the tavern and get some bitches. Like pull up in a limo or some shit, like in my SUV with some bottles of like fucking booze. Yep. And the funny thing is like that's possible in a sense to like have a story like that, and that kind of portrays like the freedom of the game and like of like how you play, which is really funny and kind of true to that aspect of it, which is it's a funny sketch. Sketch.
Sketches get stitches, Chase.
Oh shit.
I will say that I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons now for about 8 or 9 years. I started playing in 4th edition. It wasn't quite for me.
Yeah, there are now 5 editions of Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm. The 5th edition has created like a huge resurgence. The game is more popular than it has ever been. Mm-hmm. And it's very approachable and easy to play. Yeah. Which is why we thought that one of the best ways to convince people to play Dungeons and Dragons are to describe ridiculous war stories.
Ridiculous things we can do, yeah.
Yeah, that have basically happened around our tables as either players or as dungeon masters. Mm-hmm. And to really show the depth of the crazy shit that can happen in this game that you really can't replicate in any other medium.
Mm-mm. It's really like open and free.
Yes. You want to go first or you want me to go first?
I don't care.
All right. So I'm going to tell the story of the fight the fight upon the airship.
I thought you were going to say the flight of the Conchords.
The flight of the Conchords. No. this is a bit of a legendary tale amongst me and my friends.
I think you have told me this one.
I've definitely told you this story before. So, look, there are going to be some things I'm going to say in here that aren't going to have context. You're just going to have to run with it and just assume that, okay, whatever. Because this is in the middle of like a campaign of things going on. But my dingleberries of an adventurer group were hunting down someone who was trying to like escape from the city. Basically, they're investigating this cult, and this guy had information, and they knew he was the leader of this cult, and so they were following him outside of the city when it seemed like he was making an escape. Totally tangentially related to this, they had to ford like a, I don't know, like knee-high river, and it turned into the most hilarious like clusterfuck I've ever seen in my entire life. Where, like someone almost died
in a knee-high river.
In a knee-high river. I mean, it was
well,
strong
you can
current.
drown in like 3 inches of water.
I learned that from Glass. Spoiler alert
Never
for
saw
Glass.
Yeah, I haven't seen Glass.
Doesn't matter. But eventually they come across this airship that's like abandoned out in the middle of this field. And they're like, he must have gone on here. So they climb up into the airship. They find the guy who is being accompanied by a dragon that is currently trapped in a humanoid form for reasons.
For reason.
Just run with it. The guy they're chasing, he's inside the airship trying to get it started so that he can take off. The rest of the party gets stuck fighting this dragon dude, who is also a pretty dang gifted swordsman. A couple rounds into this battle, the airship takes off like 300 feet up into the air. Mm-hmm. And the party is fighting this dragon, and one of the characters, the barbarian, played by my friend Sam, who listens to this podcast. Hey, Sam. He is like, we are losing this fight very badly. And he's like, there's only one thing to do. And so he grapples with the dragon and throws both of them off the side of the airship,
right,
hurtling 300 feet down to the ground below. As they're falling, they're like beating the shit out of each other to try and basically establish who lands on the other one. The rest of the party, as they're watching this happen, they're like, we gotta help him. What are we gonna do? One of the characters was a warlock with really exceptionally large range on his attacks, but his range was 240 feet.
Yeah.
So he couldn't quite hit down on the ground below once they landed. So they tied a rope around his waist and anchored him to the ship. And they're like, go, man. And so the dragon and our barbarian paladin were fighting, grappling with each other. And eventually the barbarian succeeds, lands on the dragon as they impact 300 feet from up above. I roll so much damage that is dealt onto them. And miraculously, the dragon still barely alive after this. And the barbarian was a half-orc, so he had the ability to basically survive that hit with 1 HP.
Yep.
And so both of them like stand and get up. And this dragon is like, this dude is still alive? And at this point, they're just staring at each other. And I'm like, I'm done. Are you done? He's like, I'm done. They're like, truce. Of course, 300 feet above them. The warlock, like, freaking bungee jumps off of this airship and just casts a magic spell down. As soon as the dragon's like, I mean, truce, man. A bolt of magic just smites him where he stands, killing him instantly. And everyone on the airship was so dang proud of themselves.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And the barbarian down below was like, ah, shit. That guy definitely had information we needed. So yeah, that's one of my favorite stories. Just the pure concept of just that grapple, like fist fight, essentially, as they're falling down, the two of them like deciding on that truce. And the
we're good. Yeah, we're good.
And the immediate comic timing that was provided by the just blatant murder at that point, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess it was.
That was always a good one.
Yeah, I know one of the stories that I can think of was actually involving Cheyenne's player character, as she was a gnome, very small, very light,
Very squishy.
very squishy, not a lot of health.
Nope.
wizard who is fighting on a gangway.
Yeah.
Basically, they're in a harbor and there's a ship that they're trying to get off of onto the docks.
It's really easy to get off of a ship, to be fair.
Yeah, they're trying to get onto land.
Slightly harder.
Yeah, while there were enemies coming up onto the gangplank, and they were trying to get off. They kind of met in the middle, and obviously there's not a lot of room to go around anyone on the gangplank. So there's Cheyenne, and then there's another player character right behind her, who was a half-orc barbarian.
A lot of those running around.
Yeah, and then the enemy on the other side of Cheyenne. And so when it was the half-orc barbarian's turn in combat, he thought it would be a great idea because he lost his weapon. It actually fell into the ocean right below him.
Mm-hmm.
And so he decided it would be a great idea to pick up the very light,
Squishy.
squishy gnome in front of him
Mm-hmm.
and, reel up for an attack using his ally
Yeah.
As a weapon.
as a weapon. And he rolled a critical fail.
Yeah.
And from the force of swinging the his ally as a weapon, they all went tumbling off of the gangway into the ocean.
Yep.
Yep. So, moral of the
That was
story:
great.
don't use your friends as weapons.
Yeah. It could have actually gone really bad because I was squishy. I had like 12 health, I think, at the time. And so, like, one hit, if he, like, actually hit, that could have killed me.
Not straight away, but
Yeah.
Wouldn't have gone well.
Oh, no. Wait, I had already been injured at that point.
probably that makes
Because
more
I
sense.
was the first one there. Because I was the one who had to sneak around that boat because my stealth was the best.
Oh, it's a ship, okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. A ship.
Wow.
Okay. I was the first one there
Ships are also
already
boats.
fighting.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway.
Not
Yeah.
all boats are ships. All ships are boats.
Yeah, I was already injured. So, and it took me forever to get out of the water
She has little legs.
because I have little legs,
Little arms.
and little arms, and they don't take me too far. And I don't think this plan was thought
She has
out.
a big head and little
Don't
arms.
do it.
I did have a big head though. Remember, my character had like big hair too. Two
Oh,
big
a
fun
big
buns.
head and little arms.
There's also the time where my player character in the same campaign decided to be a pyromaniac, and I set fire to lots of things. Yep.
I don't know if I remember this.
Oh, you know? Okay, so one of our friends decided because he wanted money, he entered the fight. There was like
There's like an arena.
yeah, there was an arena where they were doing fights,
Like
and he
pit
was
fighting.
like, "I'm gonna bet all my money on myself."
On to that you
To-
could beat the champion.
Yeah, that he could beat the champion.
What
But
level was he at?
3?
Yeah.
We were like level 3.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
And the champion was actually a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a champion.
I
That
don't know,
sounds
it
like
just-
a creature.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, the champion they fight with animals and shit.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And they were like, "Oh, we can't help him because they'll know magic is happening and stuff." And so I was like,
No fiddly dinks.
yeah, like we were warned here, like you can't help your friend or something. And so I off to the side, I'm like, he's gonna die. He's gonna die. I'm gonna set fire and everyone's gonna run out.
Yeah, she's gonna cause distractions before
Yeah.
he dies in
Yeah.
the pit.
I was like, we can't die on our first night, man, because I think this was the first night.
It might have been.
It might have been the first night, maybe the second night, but I was like, nope, you're not
So
dying
they're in like
today.
the wooden bleachers.
I set fire to the bleachers.
In like different areas, she's like running
Yeah.
around setting fire.
My little gnome feet, no one noticed. Just set fire to everything, and then it was a legendary
Yeah.
fire that was brought up many times after.
You're like Hermione Granger
I got-
in that Quidditch match. Setting Snape's cloak on fire.
I
Except
did
the whole
that.
bleachers and the entire fucking pit.
Yeah, the entire pit went down.
They
Oh.
really should have been better prepared.
Yeah.
They should, yeah. And then my character tried to seduce the money out of
The T-Rex.
the
the booker.
the booker, because he still had all the money.
Yeah, because they gave him his money when they bet. And
Yeah.
then, like, he technically would have like forfeited at that point or something. I don't remember exactly what it
The
was. But
thing
like,
was on fire.
yeah, I was arguing like, no, I think I'm gonna keep the money.
Yeah. I was trying to, and I was really close. And then someone else opened their mouth, and then he was no longer like under my thrall.
I can't tell you how many
Seduction.
times attempted diplomatic motions are always closed out by the statement, and then somebody else opened their damn mouth.
Yeah. The stupid one who
almost
got
had it.
himself into the fight was like, oh, so I get my money back? He's like, huh?
No.
I was like, oh, so close.
This is one that involved me as a player character in a situation that I and my table ended up enjoying greatly, but could have gone very badly depending on the group of people you play with and your approach of your dungeon master. So we were playing Curse of Strahd, which is basically a pre-built campaign that takes place on like this little pocket alternate dimension ruled over by an evil vampire lord named Strahd.
Mm-hmm. Just his curse.
'Tis his curse to be trapped there forever. But, and your goal in that campaign is basically just you wandered in there for reasons you can't get out until you defeat him. But he is very strong, and it will take you a while before you are actually strong enough to beat him. Like I think it expects like somewhere around like level 10 to 12, somewhere in there. We were level like 7.
Okay.
And we had pissed off Strahd really, really badly by one of the things we did. And we got in a situation where like one of us was going to need to stay behind to deal with him so the rest of the party could escape.
Right.
My character, Artoris, had, I think, best described as a death wish. Not like, oh my god, the things he does, like, oh, they're so dangerous, they'll get him killed one day. Like, he kind of wanted to die.
Yeah.
Because of some terrible things he'd done in his past that he was trying to make up for. And he's like, hey, if I die saving my friends, that's pretty good, right?
That's a good start.
And so, yeah, he dueled the final boss one-on-one, like half the level he was supposed to be. It ended about how you'd expect. It was a total beatdown, and the vampire lord, just to be a dick, staked me. And so the party managed to get a hold of my body again, and their plan was to resurrect my character. But they didn't really have anyone that could cast resurrection spells.
Yeah, it's a pretty high level spell.
And so, I mean, it's actually not that bad. There are ways to resurrect with like 3rd level spells, but they're like, what do we do? Well, we know somebody that has access to a scroll that could allow us to happen. But there are eyes everywhere. And then like the church that they were able to do that, like got burnt down by Strahd, who's just vengeful as hell. Ooh. And as they're trying to figure this out, my dungeon master and I are like, what are you going to do, Kyle? Like, you're just a dead body right now that can't play. And I'm like, I'm going to make a new character. You're like, but what's going to happen when they resurrect you? I'm like, I got a plan. So that was the birth of Radovan, an Oath of Conquest paladin who was a traitor the whole damn time.
Yeah, I remember.
So Radovan was a servant of Strahd who was returning back to the valley from a mission he was on. And he basically is told to infiltrate the group and wait for the perfect time to like get revenge, because Strahd's main goal throughout the course of the campaign is essentially to claim his reincarnated lover. And for simplicity's sake, my dungeon master changed some things about the campaign, and by some things I mean a lot. But essentially, the character Irina is like this reincarnated version of the woman that Strahd loved. And so he's like, she's in hiding. The party kind of knows where she is. Like, you wait until you get a chance. You take her. You bring her to me. And I'm like, you got it, boss. And so I proceeded to make a character who's he played up this whole persona that he was just like here to just vanquish evil, and he had this like, I'm Radovan, I will destroy everything that comes my way. And I built him to be like the ultimate tank. Like, there was a part where we're like trying to protect a town full of civilians as like we're being assaulted on 3 sides. And I like took one side all by myself because I'm like, no one gets past me. And I proved myself incredibly valuable. Most of the party through like metagaming is essentially using knowledge that your character shouldn't have, but you as the player do. It's commonly frowned upon, but there are like times to use it, like such as yeah, this guy just showed up out of nowhere. Should the party have trusted him? Probably not, but they knew he was my new character, so they kind of like, give him a pass.
Yeah.
Versus if it's just like some random non-player character, like why would we ever trust this guy in a million years?
Exactly.
So most of the party was like, yeah, okay, he'll help us until Arcturus is back to life, I guess. What are you gonna do with your new character? I'm like, I already got plans. But the one person who didn't trust me was our druid, who was always like, I don't know, this guy's kind of shifty. Her player took the game extremely seriously, like more seriously than anyone at the table, which is a good and a bad thing. Like she was always in it. She was super invested in the story, but she would get really like real life mad when bad things happened.
Yeah.
And so we're like, it's okay. But she was like, my character would not trust this dude. And I'm like, I get that. That's fine. I'm here. After that big battle, we're defending all those civilians. One of the people that turned up was Irina. She like came out of hiding to like help protect everybody. Mm-hmm. And so after this battle, my character was in great shape despite holding off like one whole horde of the enemies by themselves. I had almost full life. I still had a lot of magic spells left. Like I was great. And most of the rest of the party was not in good shape. The druid had like 12 HP left. So the party was composed of me, the paladin, our druid, a rogue, and a warlock. And so they needed me as like their like meat shield. Everybody else was kind of squishy. So the rogue was still in pretty decent shape, but I had a way of dealing with him. The warlock was not in great shape, and neither was the druid. I was about to turn on the party when the druid's like, hey, can I talk to you? And I'm like, sure. And so she pulls me off to the side, and she's like, look, I know I haven't trusted you up to this point, but like, it's really clear that like after everything you've done, after all these people you saved, like I'm truly sorry. and I'm sitting here at this table, I'm like, no fucking way. And Andrew and I are my DM, like we exchange a look like, is this happening right now? Because he had texted me, he's like, now's your chance. I'm like, I know. And I'm like, and so I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, so I raise my axe and I strike her down. And everyone at the table is like laughing, like, oh, that's so funny. I'm like, I roll. I was like, wait, what? I strike her down, I divine smite her.
Oh no.
Basically incapacitating, simplifying this, she's incapacitated out of action. My character actually wasn't evil. He didn't want to kill them.
Yeah.
And so she isn't dead. She's just unconscious. I take a bead of force, which essentially like traps somebody in like a ball for like a minute, unable to help. I throw the rogue. He's stuck in that. The warlock is in bad shape. He's like out of most of his spells. He can't do much to stop me. I just pick up Irina. I steal the party's cart and I just drive away.
That's right. And they went on a chase for you, right?
And so here's when we learned something very interesting about our rogue's backstory. He had been betrayed many times in his life, and that was his berserk button.
Oh no!
And so he proceeded to like steal a cart and chase my dude across the entire valley with bloodlust in his eyes. It didn't matter that my character clearly had information the party could use. It didn't matter fucking anything. All he cared about was killing me. And he literally chased me from one side of this valley to as far away as you could possibly get to the other, like to another settlement where I was told to meet up with Strahd. He chases me up a mountain and eventually catches up because he had these stupid slippers of spider climbing. So he was running up the side of the mountain as I was like having to go up the path.
Oh God.
And eventually the two of us get locked in a duel where like I have used most of my spell slots. I've used a lot of my abilities. We're just trading blows. And it is looking, both of us are on our last like inches of life. There was like a great moment where like he was trying to hide from me and I'm like hunting him down. It felt super intense. Eventually I have him down on the ground. He attacks me and misses. I at this point had 6 HP and he has 2.
Oh God!
Like we are at the cusp and he missed, and I'm like, that's the end because rogues can only attack once. But what he also had was a dancing sword out, and so I have my axe. He's on the ground in front of me. I have advantage on attacking him. There's no way he's surviving this encounter, and he's like, I use my dancing sword. And it just basically is behind me. It's like dancing swords are essentially floating swords that you can use for like an extra attack. And it just as my character like as it's described, as my character like lifts up his axe to like just destroy Knight, the sword just pierces me right through the back, and I just drop dead.
Movie moment.
Super movie moment, man. It was fantastic, and it went. And I think strictly because it went so well, no one got mad at me for lying to them for weeks, including the druid, who's just like, honestly, that was great.
Oh man.
And I honestly think her deciding to have that speech then when I was planning on betraying her is what made her okay with the moment because of the sheer irony of it.
Hey, you're actually pretty good.
I'm sorry I didn't trust. Oh God, what's the axe doing in my stomach? Sorry.
My axe slipped.
You can have my axe.
And my axe.
It was great.
Cheyenne doesn't get that reference. Oh.
No, she doesn't.
Third person? No. That's definitely one of my favorite stories that's come about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that brings up a good discussion about like the types of players and types of DMs that there are. Because there's a lot. In your own experience, what kind of like dungeon masters have you had?
I haven't played with many dungeon masters, to be fair.
Well, how have your dungeon masters been?
Okay.
Like in terms of like how they run the game or like what they let you get away with?
So my friends and I, we are very much of the ilk that Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop games, they essentially function best as like cooperative storytelling experiences.
Yep.
And so in our group, we have 3 people who have like really DM'd, have been dungeon masters. And I think all 3 of us kind of subscribe to the fact that like if it services the story and it doesn't break like the logic of the game, we're usually down for it because those cool moments are like half the fun of playing the game.
Yeah.
And so I know there are kind of 2 approaches in a general sense to playing the game. There's like very much by the book. If it's not in the book, it's not going to happen. There's very much off the cuff, which is just like, look, we're here to have fun. Like if you come up with a crazy idea and it makes enough sense, like I'm going to let you do it.
Yeah.
And all 3 of us are very much that latter type.
Yeah.
With various amounts of like rules lawyering and stuff like in the middle of that. But I think generally speaking, in the games I play, like if you can come up with a semi-decent reason on how it makes sense and works, and it's going to be cool, I'm never going to stop you.
Yeah. I've experienced that too with you actually as my dungeon master. Just a few things like little things too, just like jumping from tree to tree. I mean, that's like it's possible, kind of, depending on how far the trees are away. But I mean, if it makes sense, like you can have a reason to do it, and it would be cool
or hilarious when you just fall out of the tree
like twice or more times.
That was a lot.
Jumping from tree to tree, just fucking hitting the tree, falling down,
or mixing ink to make it look like healing potions.
Oh
God, that was
no.
So look, I mentioned in another episode that the party did burn down like a whole alienage.
That's our party, as Kyle as our dungeon master.
Yeah, that these chuckleheads did burn down a bunch of like women and children in an alienage of goblins.
Yeah.
Now these goblins not the greatest creatures on earth, but probably didn't deserve that.
We didn't know they were women and children.
Yep, but that is not the only terrible thing they did.
We've done lots of terrible things. We were pretty bad people for most of our party being aligned to good.
That happens a lot, honestly. You tend to find with people, it doesn't matter what character they build in their head, as soon as they're allowed to do whatever they want, they're going to be like, well, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
So, yeah, other terrible things this party have done include stealing healing potions from the generally nice shopkeep in the starting town they were in.
She was very nice.
Very nice.
But I needed those health potions.
And he couldn't afford them. So he instead basically replaced them with like ink and dye that made it look like a similar color to health potions.
Right.
Yeah.
Someone out there bought a healing potion, tried to drink it in a moment of need, and very much just choked on ink and dye.
Yeah.
Well, it was,
and then died.
Yeah, because it was oil and die.
Yeah.
Um,
Not going to help you.
yeah, because I mean, we went in there into the store and I saw it. I was like, oh, I'll come back after dark when they're closed and steal it. And I'm like, wait, then she'll know. It's a really small town. Like
Yeah.
something's gonna happen. I'm like, I'm gonna buy this die for no apparent reason.
I think you swiped the die. I don't think you bought it.
You
that's
did,
right,
in fact,
yeah.
steal the die when she was not looking.
I'm bad. But yeah,
You were a rogue.
stole the
With
die,
the
already had some
backpack.
oil, came back after the shop had closed, broke in, took the health potion, used no, I think I put the health potions in like different vials so I
Yes.
could keep the
Yeah.
same vial.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
then put
It was
oil in there.
honestly pretty well done.
Yeah,
And it was
a
not
really
easy to
well
break
planned.
into this place,
Nope.
but he did a very good job.
Yeah.
It was a rogue.
Yep.
And then there's the time where you stole a lot of money from the weapon seller.
Like an exotic weapons deal.
Yeah.
Or some
Yeah.
shit.
And he screwed over another of our party members.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I left like I don't know what my reasoning was. Like if I left enough money, he wouldn't notice. But I took
Yeah.
a lot of money from this guy. He was an asshole, so I broke in after work. I mean,
They
after
stole
hours
a
again.
lot
Yeah.
of money.
And then all of a
Especially for
sudden
low
we were-
level players.
Yeah.
Yes.
a
We
lot
were
of
very
money.
rich quick.
And it never mattered.
It never mattered.
But yeah, so they just broke in and just robbed this dude blind.
No, I mean I left some. Some
Still
gold.
robbed him blind.
Yeah.
It was impressive.
It was impressive because I while I was stealing, I think I made some noise on the door or something, and I could hear noise coming from upstairs because he had woken up.
Mhm.
And I went. I don't remember exactly the order, but I think I left the door open. I went to the window to run out. I was like successfully going to get out, and then I noticed that one of the doors was left open, and I kind of didn't want him to realize that he got robbed. So I ran back through the store to
Oh, yeah.
close the door and then run back out through the window, and somehow miraculously got out.
Yeah.
But forgot to close the window.
That's right.
It was pretty beautiful. Something the reason I think about this story especially is because a couple weeks ago, my current party did something extremely similar.
Really?
So they basically in this campaign, they're like the rulers of this valley now. They have someone essentially under arrest in their dungeon, and they're investigating them for for an attempted poisoning because she was part of a suspicious group in the valley, and she was also an apothecary.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like, well, she might have been able to make this poison. And so, not intelligently, mind you, there are 5 people in this party, 2 of which are fairly responsible, 3 of which less so, let's say. Well, more just like one's just going to go along with anything. One just doesn't give a fuck, and one was literally a cat. So, and so they go there. They realize the front door is locked, and they're like, well, we don't want to just barge in. Let's break in through the back. And I'm like, you're the rulers of the fucking valley, and you are conducting an investigation.
Exactly.
Also, you probably could have just taken her keys from her bag. None of this happened. So they go into the back. Unfortunately, they're dealing with somebody who is, who has some powerful friends here, and they weren't thinking. So they there's a door, but that's not their plan. There's also a window.
You gotta go through the window.
Yes. So
Like even if the door's unlocked.
it was not, but they cast silence on the window so they can just break it
Mm-hmm.
and no one would hear.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, why are you being so shady about this? No one could really stop you from what you're doing. You're investigating. Not knowing that there was a trap on that window and a gigantic explosion that hurt them all very badly, but was also completely silent. So
That's
no one
funny.
knew. Except for them, covered in glass shards, and it's like, oh.
Fucking window shrapnel.
Yep. So they break in. Also, bear in mind, none of them are good at this. So the ledger that they were kind of looking for was completely destroyed by the explosion.
Oh, great.
They couldn't find any traces of evidence that they were looking for, but there was a locked safe that none of them knew how to open. So they stole it.
Oh, love it.
They stole the entire safe and brought it back to the castle. So they go back. The 2 responsible characters stayed at the castle because they were working on stuff, and they go, "You did what?" Like, well, we took the safe. You destroyed the ledger. Like, well, you win some, you lose some.
We stole
We stole the entire safe.
Nice.
Yep, they're a bunch of dinguses.
Jeez. Yeah, there are a lot of players that subscribe to different rules of thought, schools of thought, such as the people that are really into it and that will kind of go by the story and really want to, they want more story out of it and like to progress. And the people that like really don't fucking care.
We like to call those people murder hobos.
That's low-key what we were.
You guys were like treading that fine line between you were curious what was going on and also you were going to steal and murder everything in your way to get to it.
Hey, we were drow.
Racism.
Okay.
It's
we
okay.
were chaotic, neutral.
You were certainly that.
Yeah.
No kidding.
I was good at playing my character.
It's just what she can keep telling herself. Chaotic neutral is the bane of every dungeon master's existence. It's basically the alignment that you give your characters when you want to be evil but don't want to admit that you're evil.
Yeah.
I wanted to be evil, and I was told it's easier to not be the evil person in the party. So I was like, okay.
But then again,
neutral.
it's fine. The party, despite having a paladin, really only had one person who was obsessed with trying to do the right thing. It was not the paladin.
It was not the paladin.
And the paladin was not good.
No,
and
the paladin was arguably worse than I was.
And and after all the terrible things you did, you eventually broke that poor ranger. I guess we're just gonna do crime now.
That was great.
Yeah.
I feel like my character would have been proud.
I think your character was proud, if I remember right. You were there.
I couldn't continue with that though.
I know. Unfortunately, I got promoted and was responsible.
Yeah.
And then you got promoted and weren't.
Yeah.
Well, actually, he kind of was, because we ended our campaign, and then I had to start another one.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've all.
And then that same ranger found a way to almost break the game within the rules, because he was a druid with
You mean the same player played
the same player? Yeah, I'm
Not the same
sorry.
ranger.
Yeah, the same player who played that ranger was a druid in my campaign, who was Circle of the Moon.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a Circle of the Moon druid, and he was a high enough level to be able to turn into a rhino. And then we had a flying character, and they were like, "Hey, what would happen if I changed as I was dropped into a rhino
Right.
and dive bomb like our enemies?" And I was like, "Yeah, that would work." I was like, I was trying to figure out a way. I was like,
Max damage.
I was like, I really want that to happen,
Rhino
but I was
bomber.
like,
You
that's
don't want
also
them to do this every battle?
yeah. I was like, I really don't want you to do this every battle. And then I was like, no, he can only really do this twice.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, go ahead.
The rhino bomber.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Here's the rhino bomber.
Yep.
Oh no. Yeah, but there are players that are kind of in between that like want to have fun.
I
and,
feel like that's most players,
that is most
honestly.
players, I feel.
They're there to have fun, but it's like I'm here to kind of fuck around and release some stress and just, do whatever. But like I'm not going to object to the plot going on. I mean, every party has a mix of people with varying levels of investment in the game.
Yes.
And that's totally fine. Just as long as you all can kind of agree. Like I don't recommend people on like both ends of the spectrum playing together because you're going to piss each other off.
Yeah, don't get into real life arguments.
Yeah. Because like if you really just want to like fuck around and like sleep with random women at brothels and like do all this crazy shit, and you're playing with people who are really concerned with their characters like character arc and really want to see with like the overall mystery and stuff, that will not end well.
No.
The party that you guys were playing with once it inflated after I left definitely seemed to have a mix of both of those types of people.
Yeah. Hey, one character did want to sleep with lots of women at brothels.
Happens all the time.
Yeah, she was pretty obsessed with that.
Yeah. She was like, every time we were out of town, she was like, so, hoes?
Where are the wenches?
Yeah, where are the wenches?
Where are my
in this
wenches
town?
at?
We're like, okay, you go take your break. We're going to investigate. We'll see. We'll regroup later.
Then one time she got all the information
She
you
did,
guys
though.
needed.
There was one time that she did get all the information. And then we regrouped. She's like, so I know this, this, and this. What did you guys do? And we're like, nothing.
Yeah.
The fact really remains that Dungeons & Dragons is so much fun because there is no way to know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you're the person running the damn story.
Yeah, and not many ways to limit what you want to happen. Like there are obviously things that like you're not gonna be able to do things that would break the game.
Yeah, it's not like it's less like your 5-year-olds on a playground trying to one up each other in a game of imagination fight. It's not like, well, I'm a giant monkey and I punch you. Well, I'm immune to giant punches from monkeys because I am actually like a thing made of rubber bands. And it's like, well, then I can use my giant monkey fire breath to melt you. Well, underneath underneath all of the rubber bands, I'm actually like a man made of fire, and so that just makes me stronger. Well, the stronger the things I
Example is going so.
It's still going.
I mean, did you never see or get into those kinds of arguments when you were a little child? Exactly.
I didn't think you were gonna keep going though.
But it's you can't pull off that.
Still do that too, though.
I'm sure you do. But it's more like if there are rules in place, but how you operate within those guidelines that's where all the magic happens.
Yeah. And it's fun when you have like a group of friends that you already like generally. I mean, you can do it with strangers.
Yeah, and you can make really good friends that way.
Yeah, but I mean, if you kind of want to first venture into it, there's like there's a few different ways to do it, but I mean, there are like game shops, like local game shops that do run campaigns. Like there's one near us.
Yep.
There's a few near us, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's a few.
But I mean, that's if you want to, like, if you have no friends that are really interested in it, but you still like want to at least dive into it. I mean, I haven't done any of those myself, but I imagine they're pretty welcoming.
In addition, there are also games you can play online over the internet.
That is true. Yeah.
That's another option.
Yeah.
Gives you potentially more options, but it can be a very different experience. Not sitting around a table with people.
Yeah, sitting around a table, I feel, is the most like I wouldn't say immersive necessarily.
It's just the way the game's meant to be played. Honestly.
Yeah. It's like more bonding type of gameplay. And then like finding a group of friends that you already have that maybe someone's already had an experience like playing the game and they want to take a crack at dungeon mastering, or if they've already been a DM, or if like none of you know anything about it, like you can pick up a starter kit and like
just try and figure out and have fun.
Yeah. I know when Kyle was initially putting together a campaign like 3 years ago.
It was not 3 years ago. It was like 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about it. Yeah, because like I know Cheyenne and I had like talked about it prior that we like were not necessarily interested, but like intrigued by Dungeons and Dragons and kind of like wanted to play. And I approached you about that. Because you were already putting together a campaign and that like kind of worked out. I was like, oh, and you already have experience with it. So that's how we got into it. And then like from my experience as a player, I was like interested in the rules or like at least running it. That's why when you had left, I started my own campaign.
Stepped up.
Yeah, stepped up to the table, to the head of the table. And
he became the patriarch.
Yeah. Well, if you're interested in like if you're a player and you want to get into dungeon mastering as well, there are like pre-built modules for that reason. Like you don't have to do like a homebrew, which I would not recommend for your first.
Hard. I tried.
Yeah, I kind of regret picking the module I picked with you guys. Not because it was bad.
No, it was a good module.
But it was very just combat focused.
Yeah, and we kind of like based on the gameplay we had, like we kind of wanted to go more into interactions.
That was abundantly clear when you all guys just decided like, so I know this whole campaign is about trying to figure out what's in this dungeon, but what's like west of
west
the town we're in? And I'm just like, they barely described the fucking starting village in this thing.
There's no village to the west.
I'm like, and so I just made up shit. And they're like, let's visit. I'm like,
shit.
Okay.
Well, that was also because that was a session where one of the players couldn't make it, and we didn't really want to progress the story without him.
Yeah.
So I was just like, what's the closest town to the west? And he's
it was like a day and a half travel.
So we went. And wasn't that a murder mystery as well?
It was. Yeah.
That was fun.
I'm like, what can I do real quick here? And I'm just like, how can I tie this back into the plot going on in the other city and make it happen?
It was done brilliantly, I must say.
It was done really well. I
could not tell it was not in the module.
Yeah, I thought it was a thing that was there.
Yeah, because I'm literally like, hey guys, you want to take a break? After like you guys camped out on the road. Also, there was like this, I was just trying to have interesting things happen on the road. So I'm like, oh, there's like some thing burrowing under like the ground and stuff. I didn't know what that was.
That terrified me.
I had
to
no
be
idea
honest.
what that was. I'm like, I don't care what it is. It's
There's
not
something
gonna,
underneath you.
yeah, it's like shaking the earth around. I'm just like, and I'm like, it doesn't matter. They're never gonna figure out what that is. I have no idea. And then so like everyone went on break, and I just like wrote something in like 15 minutes.
Yeah, I know once our campaign came to an unfortunate close.
Yes.
And could not be continued. I was like looking into things that I could run, and Tomb of Annihilation had like recently come out. And I was like super into that setting. Like the fucking jungle was like, hell yeah, Indiana Jones Temple of Doom, which actually what I did kind of base like some of the campaign on. And like the Rainforest Cafe at Downtown Disney that is now vacant, RIP.
Yeah.
Oh man. But like that kind of like style of like buildings and like just the culture of that like jungle shit, like that was awesome.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, hell yeah, let's do this. And I kind of tweaked the story to fit like a kind of like a homebrew world that I had made, but like the module I kind of just placed into the world.
That I've done that.
Yeah, and I think like, throughout the campaign we kind of got away from the whole overarching story, but it was.
Well, I mean, that module as built is kind of a hex crawl, isn't it? Where you're just like going thing to thing in the dungeon, like in the jungle. That'll get away from the main plot pretty fast.
Yeah, it was like huge, like amount of land to cover with a lot of dungeons and shit within, and it was fun to run, like having something pre-based, but then like you said, going into like things not knowing what the fuck you're gonna play, like what the game is gonna be that session. That was a lot of, like it was my bad that I wasn't really reading ahead. I was kind of just going with it. Oh,
you gotta prepare.
Yeah,
man.
I mean, like I think I skimmed through most of like the story beforehand. Like I was going like overarching story and like going through this like of the campaign, like of the module. But a lot of it was also just like, what are we gonna do? What's gonna happen?
See, my problem with my campaign and what I screwed myself with now that I'm the one I'm running now is, again, these guys are all like leaders of a small like little kingdom in a valley.
Yeah.
It's their choices are what drive this entire game.
Yeah.
Which means that I basically just need to improv like a fucking crazy person.
Yeah.
And so, and this isn't ever anything I'd ever recommend, but I will go into sessions going like, I literally have no idea what's going on here. I don't know what's going to happen today. Time to just run with it and act like I know what I'm doing. Thank God I am gifted with the ability to bullshit.
Yeah, you really are.
Yeah.
I'm really good at that.
Yeah, if you're not good at that in the slightest.
Yeah,
even like I wouldn't recommend doing that.
No,
because you will like back yourself into a corner and be like,
you know.
Luckily, it could get stale.
The good news is I had plotted out a whole overarching story for the entire campaign.
Yeah.
And so I kind of have ways I can pull things in, and I have like elements I can pull to keep things moving. But yeah, like sometimes they'll just like come up with ridiculous plans. And I'm like, I never could have predicted that if my life depended on it. They're like, hey, we just killed the evil dragons that were torturing things. I know they used to take people and like eat them back at their cave. Let's go to the cave, gather up all the remains of the people, and host like a big like funeral service for all these people. I'm like, what?
Oh, that's nice.
It is nice. But and so I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, obviously I can't let that go smoothly. I'm like, what are the people at like, what are the powers at play in this valley, and how would they react to this? And then you have multiple people all trying to enact plans at the same time that get in the way of that, and it makes everything complicated and stuff. So like having a general idea of what's going on allows me to improv within reason and not just make up shit that won't matter. But I am constantly having to adapt to these people, and it's my greatest regret about deciding to do this campaign the way it is. Because, oh my God, they're monsters. And I don't regret it for a second.
Yeah, it's really fun to be able to kind of bullshit like that. Mostly on the spot, not overarchingly. Because yeah, I would recommend, if you haven't DM'd a game, to like read ahead and go based off the module. And like you can like improv some stuff and put some stuff in there, but it's much easier for you if you go by the book, like in the slightest.
Yeah. Now, pertaining to my story about being a traitor, I do want to comment, and I meant to comment after I told that story. There was a large chunk of the tabletop community who thinks that basically PvP, player versus player, is never a good idea.
Oh yeah.
It really depends. It's a big risk because if it goes, first of all, especially if you have like a secret trader, it's entirely possible that will just come out at some point and it won't be exciting or memorable at all. Alternatively, it's entirely possible that people could get really upset and feel betrayed by that happening. You really need to know your group before you start doing something like that. I know my friends well enough to think I could get away with it. And it was just kind of fun. But if you feel like you have an entire group of people that would be fine with that, I've had this idea that I want to do.
What is it?
It is a campaign where, I mean, obviously I'm never going to do this with you guys because I'm spoiling like half the fun. But it is a campaign where every single person in the group is given like a goal that they are striving for that stands in counter to like the group's overall interest. But every single one of the players thinks they're the only person with one of those goals.
Yeah.
So that they'll feel special.
Yeah.
And so you just, as a dungeon master, just like lean back and watch all these machinations all your players are trying to do against each other whilst cooperating, and then just watch as everything explodes.
I tried to do that
Mm-hmm.
as a one shot, but it just didn't have enough time.
Yeah,
To
that's
go.
that's tough.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like one of my main players, because I did it all at random, and one of the main like betrayers of the group totally forgot about it. And I'm like sitting there watching like, okay, do what you want. And then someone who did not have that card was like, nah, screw you guys. He's like, I'm sort of gonna betray you, so I'm just gonna really screw you guys over. Yeah, it worked out for him.
Yeah, I've always wanted to do something that with like a longer form like story, because I've heard people do stuff like that with like one shots, which are basically just
Single session.
yeah, like you sit at the table and you start and finish a story. But I've wanted to like for like a long-term campaign, all these characters get to know each other, all of them secretly plotting against each other and nobody knows it.
Yep.
They think they're the only person with their own vested interest. That could be fun.
Yeah.
I'd love that.
I know, it'd be great. But you need the right people to do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or even better, you play on that expectation and make them think that everyone is plotting against them and have that person actually be the only one with a thing. So it's almost like real paranoia. You think everyone's out to get you, so you have your own plan against them, and they're all like, oh, he trusted you.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of like good ideas for campaigns out there. Like, I mean, Wizards of the Coast publishes their own modules, which are pretty fun. They're like the official modules of Dungeons and Dragons, 5th edition, and you can like adapt previous editions modules into 5th edition.
There are countless old stories.
Yeah, and I mean a good resource is dmsguild.com. I pulled some stuff from there, and like drivethrurpg.com, where there's like a lot of either like little modules, one shots, like ideas, or like different rule sets that you can implement in your game, that would like bring some life into it or go like a specific route you want to do. I know. I think because the problem I know in our original campaign, when that player character wanted to like totally rescinded his good nature and wanted to go into like having a crime syndicate, was like, how the fuck do I make a rule set for crime syndicates? But now there actually is, from Wizards of the Coast, there is the published module, what's it called? Oh, yeah, Acquisitions Incorporated, which is based off of like the web series campaign, Acquisitions Incorporated, which like has that like crime syndicate basically type deal that you can like run yourself. Yep. And like that's cool. Like you can basically fucking do anything as long as like there are certain rules for it. You can look up if people in the passive like wanted to do it as well, and they'll like they might not be totally play tested. They might be broken a little bit, but it's fun to just mess around with your friends.
Yep, it is a good time. The only thing getting in the way of your fun is you.
Yeah, you
and
asshole.
the people around your table.
Why are you keeping yourself from having fun? You motherfucking
calm down. So yeah, at the end of the day, tabletop games are fun. Dungeons and Dragons are our main touchstone into that.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't know if I mentioned. I think I have mentioned it before about like branching into other tabletop games specifically so I can be a space cowboy.
Yes, you have mentioned this before.
Yeah.
I've also played Call of Cthulhu,
Right.
the
And
tabletop RPG.
we're playing. Or we have.
We haven't released any of those videos yet. Well, we might have by the time this goes up.
Yes. The Call of Cthulhu video game. Yeah. But I was just I'm like halfway through Cowboy Bebop now.
Nice.
And really want that space cowboy
It's so
bounty
good.
hunter.
Cowboy Bebop's so good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so my big takeaway is if any of this sounds fun to you, if any of this sounds interesting, give it a shot. I know there's like a lot of nerdy
Give
stigma.
it a one shot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I know there's a lot of nerdy stigma and stuff attached to it, but I promise you, like that is fading day by day.
Yeah.
Remember, nerd culture is just culture now.
Yeah, it's also kind of cool.
Yeah, nerd culture is cool culture.
It can be.
Yeah.
And so just I would say, yeah, if you tell people like, oh, I want to play Dungeons and Dragons, some people are going to look at you like, okay. But you are definitely going to find people that you would not expect just based on like your own prejudices or opinions or just how they look that are 100% all about this life.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Vin Diesel.
Yeah.
Vin Diesel is a huge tabletop
There are a lot of
RPG.
celebrity
Yes.
Joe.
D&D games.
Joe.
Mag-
The one guy from Magic Mike.
I like how my touchstone to him is True Blood.
Oh yeah, True Blood. I forgot.
He's the
husband.
See, I know how it's spelled. Couldn't tell you how to
Yeah, I
pronounce
can't
it.
pronounce it.
Manganello.
I think that's how you pronounce it.
He's
yeah.
also married to
Sofia Vergara.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that
He's
guy.
huge D&D nerd.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He has actually his own line of clothing that's D&D related.
Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Oh,
If you actually,
Sprouse Brothers. I'm sorry.
yeah. Well, I think Cole. I don't know about Dylan. Or is it the
I've
other way
seen
around?
them both,
Yeah.
but one of them does it more. than the
Yeah.
other. I don't know which one.
Yeah,
So see,
if you
cool
like Zach and
people-
Cody.
Cool people.
Zach and or Cody.
Cool people play Dungeons and
Yeah.
Dragons.
I mean, if
too.
you have any
Yeah.
doubts or like still are kind of on the shelf about it, I would actually recommend going into like a local bookstore, like Barnes and Noble, any bookstore. Like most of them have a dungeon, like a player's handbook
Mhm.
of Dungeons and Dragons. Like look in the, I think it's mostly in the games section if they have a game section,
Yeah.
or like in there. Usually like it's their own
There's usually a section.
Yeah,
section
it's
for like
that sort of
tabletop
stuff.
games.
It's near sci-fi
for like
stuff.
rule books. Yeah, well in
In Barnes and Noble.
I think it's mostly near sci-fi stuff. But open up a player's handbook and look at the playable characters, the races at least, and the classes, and you will most likely find something that you'd be like, oh, that'd be fucking dope if I could be this guy.
Mhm.
Be a fucking my dark elf rogue was a pretty cool assassin, you know.
Lastly, if you are curious about just watching the game, there are about 1,000 different games of Dungeons and Dragons being streamed online.
Like we mentioned, Acquisitions Incorporated.
Yep, that's a big one. Critical Role is a huge one. Be careful. Do not watch a game of Critical Role and then go to a table and expect your game to be like that.
Yeah.
That is a heavily professional game with it with probably one of the best DMs working,
Yeah.
Matthew Mercer.
Oh, McCree.
And so and every one of those players is like basically a freaking professional actor.
Yeah.
Who
Well, they're professional voice actors.
they're
I know,
all
but I'm
voice
just
actors.
saying. So like they know like they're the characters and the depth and stuff. It's like the ideal of
Yeah.
what you might be
Well,
striving
because they
for.
voice their characters, like
Yes.
and they get into character when they're playing their characters. You don't have to do that. Like if that's
It's
what you,
fun.
it's fun to do that. But if you're not comfortable like acting as your character, you don't have to do that.
yeah. Just play how you want to play and have fun and find people that want to have fun with you.
Yeah, you do you and no one else.
Damn right.
No context to that.
Never will
Nope,
be.
Nope.
Nope. Do you guys even remember where that came from?
I do.
Okay.
The episode that will never go up because it was
again,
corrupted.
we can't say the episode that will never go up.
One of the episodes that will never go up
This
of our
keeps
podcast
happening to us
because it was corrupted.
That's why we're doing this.
I know. But thanks so much, everybody, for listening.
Yeah, get out there and be a nerd yourself.
Be that nerdy you want to be so bad. I don't know.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to us being nerds, because
Damn
that's
right.
what we do all day, every day, is be nerds.
This was the ZymCast. I was Kyle Grubb.
I am currently Chase Matherly.
And she will be Cheyenne. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk at you later.
Yes, let me talk at you.